We are here reading the original book of Uriah Smith, entitled Daniel and Revelation, 1897. We are reading Revelation chapter 8, verses 10 to 11. Father in heaven, bless your holy word. I pray in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. The third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. Verse 11, and the name of the star is called Wormwood, and the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many died in the waters because they were made bitter. In the interpretation and application of this passage, we are brought to the third important event, which resulted in the subversion of the Roman Empire. And in finding a historical fulfillment of this third trumpet, we shall be indebted to the notes of Dr. Albert Barnes for a few extracts. In explaining the scriptures, it is necessary, as this commentator says, that there should be some chieftain or warrior who might be compared to a blazing meteor, whose course would be singularly brilliant, who would appear suddenly like a blazing star, and then disappear like a star whose light was quenched in the waters. That the desolating course of this meteor would be mainly on those portions of the world which abounded with springs of water and running streams. That an effect would be produced as if those streams and fountains were made bitter. That is, that many persons would perish, and that wide desolations would be caused in the vicinity of those rivers and streams, as if a bitter and baleful star should fall into the rivers, into the waters, and death should spread over lands adjacent to them and watered by them. Notes on Revelation 8. It is here premised that this trumpet has allusion to the desolating powers and furious invasions of Attila against the Roman power, which he carried on at the head of his hordes of Huns. Speaking of this warrior, particularly of his personal appearance, Mr. Barnes says, in the manner of his appearance, he strongly resembled a brilliant meteor flashing in the sky. He came from the east, gathering his Huns, and poured them down, as we shall see, with the rapidity of a flashing meteor suddenly on the empire. He regarded himself also as devoted to Mars, the god of war, and was accustomed to array himself in a peculiarly brilliant manner, so that his appearance, in the language of his flatterers, was such as to dazzle the eyes of beholders. And speaking of the locality of events predicted by this trumpet, Mr. Barnes has this note. It is said, particularly, that the effect would be on the rivers and on the fountains of waters. If this has a literal application, or if was supposed in the case of a second trumpet, the language used was such as had reference the portion of the empire that would be particularly affected by the hostile invasion. Then we may suppose that this refers to those portions of the empire that abounded in rivers and streams, and more particularly those in which the rivers and streams had their origin. For the effect was permanently in the fountains of waters. As a matter of fact, the principal operations of Attila were on the regions of the Alps and on the portions of the empire whence the rivers flowed down into Italy. The invasion of Attila is described by Mr. Gibbon in his general language. The whole breadth of Europe, as it extends about 500 miles from the Euxine to the Adriatic, was at once invaded and occupied and desolated by the myriads of barbarians whom Attila led to the field. And the name of the star is called Wormwood. denoting the bitter consequences. These words, which are more intimately connected with the preceding verse, as even the punctuation in our version denotes, recalls us for a moment to the character of Attila, to the misery of which he was the author of the instrument, as the terror that was inspired by his name. Total extirpation and erasure are terms which best denote the calamities he inflicted. He styled himself the scourge of God. One of the lieutenants chastised and almost exterminated the Burgundians of the Rhine. They traversed, both in their march and in their return, the territories of the Franks, and they massacred their hostages as well as their captives. 200 young maidens were tortured with exquisite and unrelenting rage. Their bodies were torn asunder by wild horses, or were crushed under the weight of rolling wagons, and their unburied limbs were abandoned in public roads as a prey to dogs and vultures. It was the boast of Attila and that the grass never grew on the spot which his horse had trod. The Western Emperor, with the Senate and the people of Rome, humbly and fearfully deprecated the wrath of Attila. And the concluding paragraph of the chapters which record his history is titled Symptoms of the Decay and Ruin of the Roman Government. The name of the star is called Wormwood. Okay. May you and I continue to examine this book so that we will be informed and blessed. May God continue